Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely flip the script on how you handle relationships. Think about it for a sec. How much of our day is spent just reacting emotionally to other people? It's draining, right? But what if we could swap those raw, knee-jerk reactions for deliberate, proactive creativity? We're diving into some incredibly fascinating insights from Steve Chandler's work on motivation, and we're going to see exactly how a simple shift in where you process your problems can literally change everything. All right, let's ground ourselves real quick with this profoundly beautiful thought from the philosopher Krishnamurti. He makes the point that relationships aren't just some side gig, they're basically everything we are. To be is to be related. You just can't exist in a vacuum. And honestly, you really can't build your truest, most authentic self without building meaningful relationships along the way. It's the absolute fundamental fabric of being human. So, when we think about building these connections, our instinct is usually to look entirely outward. But author Steve Chandler structures his corporate training seminars in a completely different way. He actually dedicates a whopping 75% of his focus strictly to self-motivation. That leaves just a tiny 25% slice for the actual mechanics of connecting with other people. It's this massive inward tilt, prioritizing the individual way over group dynamics. Now, as you can probably guess, he gets a ton of pushback on this. Corporate leaders and CEOs see this ratio and immediately start to panic a little, wondering if things like team building or customer relations are just getting completely swept under the rug. They'll ask Chandler, hey, isn't this totally backwards for a corporate environment where teamwork is everything? Shouldn't we be spending way more time learning how to actually work together? But Chandler's counter-argument here is absolutely crucial. Your own personal motivation just has to come first. And why is that? Well, honestly, nobody wants to build a connection with someone who's completely unmotivated or constantly negative. Your external connections are always going to mirror your internal state. It's only after you've built that rock-solid internal foundation that you can even think about relationship building, which, by the way, Chandler argues shouldn't be about managing people at all, but rather focusing entirely on creativity. And that brings us to where things usually go off the rails in that remaining 25%. Even with a strong internal foundation, conflict happens. It's inevitable. And this plunges us right into what author Colin Wilson so perfectly calls being upside down. This is that heavy, totally unresourceful state we crash into when we get completely bogged down by raw emotion in our interactions. Basically, when conflict hits, our default is to feel our way through it, and all our logic just totally goes out the window. So, we've got a stark contrast in how we can process this conflict. If you send a problem down into your emotional heart, you stay stuck. You get reactive, defensive, and end up just looping in anger or sadness. But if you take that exact same problem up into your mind, oh man, that is where creativity thrives. Treating a tense relationship like an intellectual puzzle opens up literally unlimited paths forward. You turn a massive roadblock into a genuine opportunity. To really see this shift from emotion to intellect in action, let's look at this incredible real-world story from Chandler. His fourth-grade daughter Margie was in class watching this really shy classmate who had accidentally swiped a massive black permanent marker across her own nose. Now, kids can be brutal, right? So the whole class starts pointing and laughing ruthlessly, and this poor girl is just instantly reduced to tears. Utter humiliation. Margie desperately wanted to help her friend, but think about it. If she had reacted from that upside-down emotional state we just talked about, what would happen? She probably would have either yelled at the bullies in anger or just sat down and cried right alongside her friend. And here's the kicker. Neither of those emotional defaults would have actually done anything to solve the public embarrassment or change the weird vibe in the room. Instead, Margie did something absolutely brilliant. She elevated herself right up into her creative mind. On pure impulse, she grabbed a black marker, drew a huge dot on her own nose, handed the marker to another kid, and dropped this perfectly disarming line. I like my nose this way. What about you? In a split second, she completely abandoned the emotional drama and stepped right into a space of pure, clever problem solving. And because she acted like a creative artist rather than just emotionally reacting, the tension in the room instantly evaporated. The crying girl looked up and actually started laughing. And suddenly, the whole class is happily coloring their own noses. They literally turned a completely humiliating mistake into an exclusive playground trend. All because one single kid chose to think creatively instead of emotionally. Now, what you should take away from this isn't that you need to shut down and become some unfeeling robot. Not at all. You absolutely have to feel your feelings. That's what makes us human. But when it's time to actually fix a relationship issue, You've got to travel up your ladder. Step 1, simply notice the feelings and just let them exist. Step 2, and yeah, this is the really hard part, refuse to think with them. Then, step 3, ascend up to that higher creative mind where the real solutions are hanging out. Which brings us right back full circle to a deeply empowering realization. High-quality human connections, they aren't just happy little accidents that fall into our laps. They are deliberately, creatively crafted by us. When you actively take the creative reins in your interactions, your relationships are inevitably going to improve. And the best part, that beautifully feeds right back into that massive 75% slice of your own self-motivation. I want to leave you with this beautifully poetic thought from Luciano de Crescenzo to wrap up our explainer today. We are all essentially angels with only one wing, completely relying on our creative connections with each other to fly. It really begs a powerful question, doesn't it? The very next time you face friction with someone, are you going to stay upside down and stuck in the emotion? Or are you going to climb your ladder and create a masterpiece? Thanks for learning with me today.